Senator Richard Blumenthal just exposed one of the most alarming accountability failures in the entire federal government. The VA Community Care Program has exploded from $9 billion in 2019 to $48 billion in the 2026 budget request. That's a 530% increase. And Blumenthal asked, why the disparity? And the VA official admitted something staggering. The VA Community Care Program is the only government health payer program in America that has zero tools to manage quality, zero tools to manage cost, and zero program integrity controls. And Blumenthal asked, how much has been lost to improper payments since the Mission Act? And the auditor said, since 2021, VA has reported about $4 billion in improper payments and overpayments. $4 billion just gone. And Blumenthal said, $4 billion, and the auditor said, yes. And Blumenthal exposed that community care providers aren't even required to meet the same training and quality standards as VA providers. They're only incentivized to do so. And Blumenthal said, shouldn't they be absolutely required to meet the same standards? Because veterans going to community providers have the same right to quality care as veterans going to a VA facility. So this week, Senator Richard Blumenthal questioned VA officials about the community care program's 530% spending explosion, lack of oversight tools, and $4 billion in improper payments. Take a look at this, and I'll give you my breakdown at the end.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Since 2019, the funding for, disregard this chart for a moment, since 2019, funding for the VA Community Care Program has increased from $9 billion to more than $48 billion in the VA fiscal year 2026 request. That's an increase of 530%. That's a staggering increase. Wouldn't you agree?
Ranking Member, that's a large increase.
Over that same period, funding for VA direct care has increased by far less, about 200%, from approximately $50 billion to $70 billion. Why the disparity?
Ranking Member, I think that goes back to my prior comments to the chairman that these numbers are not risk adjusted. And so what they show is we have more veterans receiving more care. It doesn't account for the type of care those veterans are receiving. I think back to the point the chairman made too, that they are receiving disproportionately emergency care, in-home and geriatric care, which are expensive services to provide. And so what I would say is the measure of this is not just the gross spending and what the difference is. What I'd say is, what is VA getting for it? And does VA have the tools to ensure that we are getting the highest value of care for those dollars and that we are maximizing our dollars to get the most that we can? Under the current community care program, we do not have those tools. We are the only payer program, the only government payer program that does not have the ability to manage quality, to manage cost, to use value-based, to use alternative payments, to do to have program integrity. We are the only program that does not have these controls. We are introducing those in Next Gen. And so I share your concerns about the expenditures and the increase and ensuring that we are maximizing the value. This program gives us the tools to do that and to be accountable to the Congress, to our veterans, to be able to do that.
So just so I understand, you agree that more needs to be done to maximize oversight, to make sure that we get quality for the dollars that are being spent on veterans care, and your explanation for the disparity is that it's a different type of care, more specialized care, geriatric care that is provided in the community as opposed to VA direct facilities?
Senator,
is that an accurate summary? I'm trying to put it in
Senator, that's possible, but there are two issues here. Number one, we don't risk adjust that for what the care is that is received and what's driving those costs. So that's a dollar amount. What's behind it is not adjusted. So that's number one. And then number two, because we do not measure quality in the community care program right now, I can't tell you that the care is less or more different or better in the community versus direct care. We don't do that today. Next Gen includes our ability to do this. That's a huge movement forward so that we can then compare. Are we getting more or less? Are we getting best value or are we not? I can't answer that for you now because the program isn't built to do that.
This chart indicates that the rate of increase in the numbers of veterans served has been far less than the rate of increase in the amount of spending. Ms. Seawright, do you have an explanation for that fact?
No, we haven't evaluated that in our ongoing audits, so I can't speak to that exactly.
Mr. Topping, do you?
Senator, what those charts show me is that we have more veterans receiving more care. That's what they show me. The ability to dive into what that care is, whether that's the right care, whether it's the appropriate care, whether there's good value for that care, that doesn't show me that. And the program today is not built to do that. Next Gen is, which is why this is so exciting for us.
Well, I would suggest that we need to answer those kinds of questions. You don't have answers right now. You say that the program isn't designed to provide those kinds of answers, but anybody running a healthcare program would say we really ought to be answering those questions. Wouldn't you agree?
Senator, I want to answer those questions, which is why we have designed Next Gen to include these tools and capabilities. I want to answer those questions.
Okay. Talking about next generation, Ms. Seawright, your report indicates that we need to, and I'm quoting, community care providers should be incentivized to meet the same training and quality standards as VA providers. Isn't the word incentivized a little bit light on requirements? Shouldn't we absolutely guarantee that they meet the same training and quality standards as VA providers?
Providers, whether they're in the VA or in the community, have a standard that they are all trained to, right? But within VA, they are, have additional standards that they train to, the culture of the veteran, to serve the veterans. So, in our position, the VA is asking the community providers to do more, to have a higher level of education or awareness of the community that they're serving. So,
but I guess maybe saying instead of just incentivizing them, shouldn't they be absolutely required to meet the same standards of quality and training and efficiency and all of the criteria that a veteran going to a VA facility has a right to expect?
if it's within the contract, yes, they should be required.
In the contract, as a matter of definite provisions and requirements.
Correct.
And let me just ask you very quickly, finally, Ms. Seawright, have you looked into amounts of overpayments or lack of contract enforcement relating to community care since the enactment of the Mission Act?
Yes, we've done quite a bit of work in relation to community care since the enactment of the Mission Act. That work varies from, payment oversight to services provided. Our investigative division looks at fraud investigations and, things that evolve from hotlines as well. And in the payment integrity world, we also do annual reviews of the reports that VA provides on, underpayments and overpayments to community care as well.
Do you have an estimate as to how many taxpayer dollars have been lost to improper payments or lack of enforcement?
Since 2021, VA has reported about $4 billion in improper payments of overpayments to the TPA, which is about 4% of the total amount paid out.
$4 billion.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. My time has expired on this round, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's talk about what you just heard, because Senator Richard Blumenthal just exposed a massive accountability black hole inside the Department of Veterans Affairs that should alarm every American who cares about how we treat our veterans and how we spend taxpayer money. 530% spending increase, zero quality measurement tools, zero cost management tools, $4 billion in improper payments, and community care providers who aren't even required to meet the same standards as VA providers. Let me walk you through all of this, because every single number in this hearing is alarming. Blumenthal started with the numbers. He said, since 2019, funding for the VA community care program has increased from $9 billion to more than $48 billion in the VA fiscal year 2026 request. That's an increase of 530%. That's a staggering increase. Wouldn't you agree? And the VA official said, that's a large increase. A large increase, 530%, and the best the VA official can say is, that's a large increase. Let's put that in perspective. In 2019, the community care program cost $9 billion. 7 years later, it costs $48 billion. That's $39 billion more per year being spent on veterans receiving care from private sector providers outside VA facilities. That's not growth, that's an explosion. And Blumenthal gave the comparison. Over that same period, funding for VA direct care, veterans being treated at actual VA hospitals and clinics, has increased by far less, about 200%, from approximately $50 billion to $97 billion. Why the disparity? That's the devastating question. Direct care, VA hospitals, VA clinics, VA doctors grew 200%. But community care, private sector providers paid by VA, grew 530%. Community care is growing more than twice as fast as direct VA care. And Blumenthal wants to know why. And the VA official, Mr. Topping, gave an answer that should alarm every member of Congress. These numbers are not risk adjusted. What they show is we have more veterans receiving more care. It doesn't account for the type of care those veterans are receiving. Veterans are receiving disproportionately emergency care, home care, and geriatric care, which are expensive services to provide. More veterans receiving more care. That's the explanation for a 530% spending increase. But Blumenthal wasn't satisfied and pushed further. And Topping admitted something extraordinary. Under the current community care program, we do not have the tools to manage quality, to manage cost, to use value-based payment, to use alternative payment models, or to have program integrity. We are the only government payer program that does not have these controls. The only one. Medicare has quality controls. Medicaid has quality controls. Every other federal health program has tools to measure whether they're getting value for taxpayer dollars. But the VA community care program, the program that has grown 530% to $48 billion, has none of those tools. None. Think about what that means practically. The VA is sending veterans to private doctors and hospitals and paying $48 billion for that care, and they have no way to measure whether that care is good. No way to measure whether the prices being charged are fair. No way to detect fraud or abuse. No way to compare whether veterans getting community care are getting better or worse outcomes than veterans getting direct VA care. And Blumenthal made sure the record was clear. You agree that more needs to be done to maximize oversight to make sure that we get quality for the dollars being spent on veterans' care? And the official agreed. And Blumenthal summarized, your explanation for the disparity is that it's a different type of care, more specialized care, geriatric care, provided in the community as opposed to VA direct facilities. Is that an accurate summary? And Topping said, Senator, that's possible. But there are two issues. One, we don't risk adjust for what care is received and what's driving costs. And two, because we do not measure quality in the community care program right now, I can't tell you that the care is less or more or different or better in the community versus direct care. We don't do that today. The VA is spending $48 billion a year on community care, and they cannot tell you whether that care is good. They cannot compare it to direct care. They literally do not have the ability to answer the most basic question a healthcare program should be able to answer. Are veterans getting quality care? And Blumenthal showed a chart comparing the rate of spending increase to the rate of increase in veterans served. And the chart showed spending has increased far faster than the number of veterans receiving care. In other words, costs per veteran are skyrocketing. He asked the auditor, Ms. Sight, about this, and she said, "We haven't evaluated that in our ongoing audit, so I can't speak to that exactly. Can't speak to that." An ongoing audit of the VA community care program, and the auditor can't explain why spending per veteran is growing so dramatically faster than the number of veterans being served. And Topping's response was equally unsatisfying. What those charts show me is that we have more veterans receiving more care. The ability to dive into what that care is, whether that's the right care, whether that's appropriate care, whether there's good value for that care, that doesn't show me that. And the program today is not built to do that. Not built to do that. The $48 billion program is not built to tell you whether you're getting good value. It's not built to tell you whether the care is appropriate. It's not built to tell you anything except the total dollar amount being spent. And Blumenthal said exactly what needed to be said. Anybody running a healthcare program would say we really ought to be answering those questions. Wouldn't you agree? And Topping said, I want to answer those questions, which is why we have designed NextGen to include these tools and capabilities. NextGen. That's the VA's new community care program being developed. And Topping is saying the fix is coming eventually. But right now, today, the existing $48 billion program has none of the oversight tools that any competent healthcare program manager would consider basic. And Blumenthal turned to the quality standards issue. He referenced a GAO report that said community care providers should be incentivized to meet the same training and quality standards as VA providers. And Blumenthal challenged that word directly. Isn't the word incentivized a little bit light on requirements? Shouldn't we absolutely guarantee that they meet the same training and quality standards as VA providers? Incentivized versus required. That's the distinction Blumenthal is drawing. Incentivized means you get rewarded if you do it, but suffer no consequences if you don't. Required means you must do it or face consequences. And for veterans receiving care from community providers, the standard should be required, not incentivized. Because a veteran going to a community provider paid by VA has the same right to quality care as a veteran going to a VA hospital. And Ms. Sight said, if it's within the contract, yes, they should be required in the contract as a matter of definite provisions and requirements. And Blumenthal said, correct. The auditor just confirmed that what should be happening, contractual requirements for community care providers to meet VA quality standards, is not consistently happening right now. And finally, Blumenthal asked the question that produced the most explosive answer. Have you looked into amounts of overpayments or lack of contract enforcement relating to community care since the enactment of the Mission Act? And Ms. Sight said, yes. Since 2021, VA has reported about $4 billion in improper payments and overpayments to the TPA, which is about 4% of the total amount paid out. $4 billion since 2021 in improper payments and overpayments from a program that has no quality management tools, no cost management tools, and no program integrity controls. $4 billion to a third-party administrator that isn't required to meet VA quality standards. $4 billion with no ability to measure whether the care being paid for was appropriate, necessary, or even delivered. And Blumenthal said simply, $4 billion, and the auditor confirmed, yes. Like, subscribe, and share this everywhere. Because Senator Richard Blumenthal just exposed that the VA Community Care Program has exploded 530% from $9 billion to $48 billion, while being the only government health program in America with zero quality management tools, zero cost controls, and zero program integrity measures. $4 billion in improper payments since 2021. Community care providers not even required to meet the same standards as VA providers. And the VA can't even tell Congress whether veterans getting community care are receiving good care or bad care. This is a $48 billion accountability black hole.